Welcome to the Cream of Manchester podcast. This week, previewing the Brighton game. Brighton having been quite a lot of a bogey side for Manchester United over the last few years, but following the epic victory at Anfield last week, we are hoping for better things and to kick on and maybe just get that third win in a row, which has been elusive for some time. Joining us today, we have Roy, who's been to several United Brighton games over the years, including the famous 1983 Cup final. We have Murph, who has, actually been to one slightly under the radar United v Brighton game, albeit an FC United v Brighton game, which we'll discuss a bit later. And we've got Lincoln, a Brighton season ticket holder, who can tell us a bit more about why they are so good. Maybe we can learn a few things, and also maybe a couple of their players, one of whom we know well and one of whom we maybe like to get to know a little bit better. So first question, Lincoln, is Danny Welbeck the greatest player Brighton have ever had?
Probably value for money, considering he came on it free. You know what? I don't know. I think even in the Premier League era, Glenn Murray, through that position, he might push Danny, but in the rankings. But look, I mean, I think he's been a brilliant part of the squad. Anyone who knows anything about Brighton knows that at any given time, it's quite a young squad we have. People like Danny who bring that experience, not just what they can offer on the pitch, but keeping everyone's head screwed on right, and having a big picture in mind. It's really valuable. If he didn't have the goals in his locker, I think he'd be a crucial member of the squad. But what he's done, not just over the course of his career, but especially last season. I mean, it was his best goal scoring season of his career, right? Danny Malbec, aging like fine and wine.
Yeah. And I was talking to Roy before we started just about the fact that, United let him go too early. And I think that's accepted in hindsight. I suppose at the time there were quite a few who were, eager to see the back of him. He'd had some poor games for us, but, like I say, in hindsight, looking at what came after him, we miss him. And it'd be interesting to see how he goes tomorrow. He's developing into a very fine Premier League centre forward.
Yeah, I'm aware that you guys have actually looked at re-signing him the last 2 summers, both under Ten Hag and this past summer under Hammer. And I think the thing that is easy to forget when we have this very similar narrative or situation with Gyökeres, because this is the one we let go, but he wasn't worth keeping at the time. It's been a fair few seasons passed before he became the goal scoring machine he is now. Putting aside just how well he'll cope with the Premier League, I think the same thing goes for Danny. And with Danny, it's maybe less his talents and more his fitness, because he's now scored more goals in the league for us than he did combined for United and Arsenal. And the main reason for that isn't that he suddenly found his shooting boots. He's been able to stay fit with us, and he wasn't in the past at his past clubs. So that's given him that room to actually perform. So yeah, I don't know how much you should really regret letting him go, because he's just a different player now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, we've got it in the neck from all angles at the moment. When Rashford scores for Barcelona or Højlund scores, it's, people just say, you made the wrong decision, but it's the right place for the right team. That's the key to all this, isn't it? And some people fit and some people don't fit. And I don't think anyone in United's fan base wanted, they want local lads more than anything to succeed at United. That's always been the way. But, it is what it is. We wish him well. And hey, if he ends up back at Old Trafford even in the next couple of years, that would be great. Now, one other player that we need to discuss is this Carlos Baleba, who Brighton are well aware of United's interest, and they apparently have put £100 million price tag on his head. What makes him special, Lincoln? Roy and Murph, I mean, just from a kind of Manchester United fan's point of view, I've not seen very much of him. Have you, Roy?
No, not at all, really. In fairness to Brighton, there's not as many full games on the television. You see Match of the Day and wherever. And when the name came up, I'm like, looking at Google and thinking, who is he? I mean, he's only played, what, 30 odd games for Brighton, 40 games, something like that. I tell you, who would be a better signing? Tony Bloom, the chairman, because he is a magician. Now, that would be a good signing because, you know, he plays everything to perfection, really does. Must be, well, I can't think of a better chairman than who he is, or owner. Of course, he's a owner chairman. But as for Belieber, I mean, wow, I'm thinking, okay, good midfield, but 100 million. I mean, whoa, I've not seen him. So he's probably in the 40 million bracket for me with add-ons and he's reasonably young, isn't it? But I mean, they've got him, and if you want him, you've got to pay the
That's
dollar.
the way, isn't it? What's good about him, Lincoln? What makes him special?
Well, I'm not going to deny that the price we quoted, it wasn't screw you money. We had this experience with Caicedo where we didn't want him to go when he did, and we didn't think he would. We thought we'd keep him for another season. And the fact that we were quoted the fee that we were quoted by Chelsea, and we just couldn't say no to it. So I think it's a bit of a similar situation where it is in part a tactic devised to keep him here. And by all accounts, he's happy to be here for at least another season, which is good. But look, I mean, the kid's a beast. He somehow has strength and aggression and flair. He is essential for our defense. I mean, I shudder to think how we would cope for a whole season with him out of form, the way the way he was until this past weekend against Newcastle, because we need him there to shield the defense, to screen. But I think something that he has that we have a line of maybe 3 or 4 now defensive midfielders that have come out of Brighton that have gone on to do great things. Basuma, who went to Spurs, Caicedo, who went to Chelsea, and Baliba's the latest in that line of defensive midfielders. What he has that Basuma definitely didn't have. Caicedo's maybe developing. He's being given that freedom at Chelsea. Is also going forward. His long range strikes. He runs into the box. He's quite a threat as well going forward. And he's so young. I mean, he's a talisman for his national side. And I think he's only, it'll sound funny to say that considering I think he's got like 10 caps. But I think if he's fit, he's the first name around. And yeah, he's vital to how our team works, which again is partly why we would quote 100 million, because why should we want to go back into the market and find a replacement? If we have to, we will. We've got Malik Alkoué on loan at Swansea, who a lot of people think is the Belieber replacement already in the building. But he's so young, he's still got room for growth. I think he appreciates that, and he's just such a key part of his team that we're very happy to still have him.
Good. Well,
it might be worth, Remo. It might be worth us finding out who Brighton have got in line to replace him, because he'll be a lot cheaper than what
Lincoln just said. The lad at Swansea. I didn't catch his name.
Yeah,
I won't repeat it.
What was his name, Lincoln? I'll just write it down.
Malik Alkoué, I think he might have actually come to a lot of English football fans' attention for the first time this weekend, because he was sent off for a headbutt the other night.
We don't need that.
Well, to be fair, I think he's 19, so he's definitely got a lot of room to grow in terms of maturity sense. But what I was going to say was, boy, what you're getting at an issue that we're increasingly facing, which is that it used to be the case. So we'd fish in these ponds, especially South America, but not only, and we'd be the only clubs looking. Or I know that there are exceptions. I know that United looked at Caicedo, decided that they didn't want to gamble on him. But now, if we look at a player, even just send a scout out to look at him, watch him in one game, it's all over the internet. It means that a lot of the time we're not even able to progress that far in talks for players, because the mere association of Brighton means they're on someone else's radar now. I think Bournemouth are having the same thing happen to them. And sometimes it's not even real or interest. Sometimes it's reported because the agents know, if we say the Brighton's looking at our player, we'll get some bigger fish looking at him. And then, and that works. So, we've recently started buying fewer players in South America. And some of our fans have wondered why. Well, a big reason why is because that's no longer a market that we're kind of alone in. A lot of clubs are just going straight to the source. And, you look at Chelsea, and they're just buying kids directly from South America. Nottingham Forest are doing the same. Why? Because they know, we don't have to wait for Brighton to buy them and then charge us double.
Yeah, it's an area United have been behind the 8 ball in for a long time, and hopefully it will improve. But yeah, like Roy said, you end up getting bent over for 100 million every time you want a midfielder. You either grow them yourself or you go and find them yourself. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
You've got Mane. I mean, it's amazing that he can't get in the squad.
Yeah, a big controversial call at the minute, that one, I think. A good player, but who doesn't seem to fit into Amarim's, certainly his first 11. But I know a hell of a lot of Premiership sides would kill for Kobbie Mainoo in their team. But we'll leave that one for a minute. Lincoln, obviously this was slightly painful for us, but your favourite games over recent years against Manchester United?
Do you know what? I've been to 4 or 5 now. I did happen to be present for your one win in recent years, not on penalties, the 2-0 at the end of the De Zerbi season. I mean, that game would have ended differently if everyone were not marinating in the news that he was leaving. I think there's my favorite score line, and then just my favorite game, the 4-0 under Potter. That was a great game. I think Ronaldo was just left scratching his head as to what was going on around him in that game. But obviously, just emotionally, I think the 1-0 at home that clinched Europe for us with the McAllister penalty. I mean, that's an all-time game just for the finality, really, for Brighton fans. When we knew that it was all, it was happening.
Was that the game Luke Shaw decided to play basketball in the 95th minute?
Well, but yeah, I think that was a really cathartic game, not just because of the previous month's cup exit, but because we still weren't sure that we were going to get over the line and get into Europe. But, it ended up being a tight finish at the end of the season, and yeah, that was a great game.
And obviously the FA Cup semi-final a couple of years ago being probably a bit of a kick in the teeth for Brighton. I remember going to that thinking Brighton were favourites for that game. They weren't with the bookies, but I remember thinking that game, and it could have gone either way, I suppose. It was penalties, wasn't it? But I was very surprised we came away with the win that day.
It was definitely a kick in the teeth for us. I think most Brighton fans will tell you we should have won in the 90. Shouldn't have even gone to pens. I think there'll be disappointment about the fact that we didn't have the right keeper for that game. Sanchez is a good shot stopper, but we would have rather had. I think we would have rather played Steele in hindsight. Yeah, I mean, I still think that had we gone to the final, we would have given City a real game. I know that it was a fantastic season for them, as you will be aware. That if not then, I don't know when we would have come so close, other than '83, of course, to actually lifting a trophy. So that definitely feels like a missed opportunity. I think our attitude to the cups, especially after last season in the Palace, is we have to take them seriously. Not that we were neglecting them, not that we were playing B teams necessarily in the cups, but I think we aren't simply looking at setting qualifying for Europe for the league as our ambition. I think we recognize that the cups are very for the taking. We're going to go for it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Teams that have come up within the last 15, 20 years, they want to consolidate and their money. There's got to be a point where you actually start winning things, and I think there's a recognition now, isn't there, that those FA Cup, League Cup, there's a real opportunity there to win some silverware, and that's ultimately what the fans want. I know, there's if we get into Europe, we get more money, blah blah blah, but the proof is in the pudding of winning silverware. So, you were there in '83, Roy. Good day out.
I got absolutely drenched. It chucked it down. I just I went to the 2-2 game. We'd flown in from Malta the day before, and I was up early Saturday morning, drive down to London. Absolutely chucked it down. I had a great view. So where I'm sat on the halfway line, I had a great view of Wilkins, goal, and also a great view of Smith must score. But he'd already scored, actually. He opened the,
Yeah, he
people
had.
forget that. He'd opened the scoring for Brighton, and then Stapleton got the equaliser. Wilkins scored a top goal. And then Gary Stevens made it 2-2. And then I'm not being disrespectful to Brighton, but they actually got relegated that year. And I think United had got ripped off in the League Cup final by a guy who became
George
a friend
Courtney.
of mine, George Courtney, the referee, who should have sent
Grobbelaar.
Grobbelaar off when guy karated
Gordon
McQueen, and
McQueen,
we
yeah.
got beat. We got beat in the League Cup that season.
How can you be
I
a
just think
friend with him,
United.
Roy?
Well, it just proves what time does bring.
Going for a drink with David Ellery.
No, it's we just happened to be. He was involved with Bishop Auckland. I'm an ambassador up there, and
Right, yeah.
that's how I come to know him. And I have quizzed him with very strong language as what was happening there
Yeah.
when someone's karate and high kicking someone on the edge of the box. But I think United were too complacent in the 2-2. I really do. I think, as I say, with respect to Brighton, they were relegated that season, and United were a decent cup side who should have done much, much better in the league with the players that we had. But it was all central to Robson, really, wasn't it? Which again is amazing, because you look at, your Stapletons, your Wilkins, and Whiteside was only young, but the players that were around him, they were all experienced players. And when Robson went out of the team, it shouldn't have been so dramatic. So, it was a long journey home. It was raining, 2-2. But I did fancy it strongly for the replay because I feel it was just that bit of complacency.
And
Watched it on the telly.
Murph, you went to a game that probably is less well known down at Brighton's ground. I'm trying to think of the year, but it was FC United down there in the Cup.
Yeah, that was 2010. That was immediately after FC United had beaten Rochdale. That was quite a controversial match at Rochdale in 2010. And the next round, FC United got drawn against Brighton and Hove Albion. And it wasn't played at the Amex, as you now call it. It certainly wasn't played at the Goldstone ground. It was played at some athletics ground, and I can't remember the name of it. I've not had the time to look it up. But I remember it was FC went up in front. And bear in mind, FC were like the second tier of the non-league or something like that. Northwest Counties Division 1 or something at the time. And Brighton were really in the doldrums. I think they were in like the League 1 or League 2. And then you got a late equaliser, and then FC United's keeper, his name escapes me now, saved the last minute penalty. But it just goes to show how things had changed in that period of time. That 15 years ago, FC United come within a whisker knocking Brighton out of the FA Cup. And then 15 years later, they're unlucky not to beat Manchester United in the FA Cup semi-final. I mean, it's amazing how quickly it changed.
Yeah, it is. And I suppose a lot of credit, as Roy said earlier, goes to having a decent owner who invests in a club and gets the right people in. But that's an old wound for Manchester United fans, I'm sure. But and obviously partly the reason FC United are in existence in the first place. But so in terms of tell us a bit more, because obviously what Murph alludes to there, Lincoln, is that Brighton were in the doldrums as recently as kind of 15 years ago. Has there been a kind of I don't know, a kind of a new fan culture at Brighton in terms of people who attach themselves to the club who aren't welcome, or I'm thinking more of the online presence that obviously Manchester United get more than most in terms of absolute clowns who wouldn't know Old Trafford from Wembley, and we have to live with them and the abuse they give players and what have you. Do Brighton suffer with that?
We suffer with online Man United fans. Yeah, they keep look. I mean, as someone who started following the club 4 or 5 seasons ago, I'm not the best placed to comment on it, but I know from speaking to people that really the big wound that was left by those years in the wilderness and the doldrums, but it's just there was a lost generation of Brighton fans. There were so many people in the area who, didn't grow up supporting the club because of the state it was in, and the fan base that remained, it was very loyal, very close knit, and those people are still going to games today. But and of course, Europe was just unthinkable for them when it happened. But I think the club is healing. There are a lot of young people in Sussex who support the club. Obviously, they have an international fan base now. I'm part of it, but most of that comes from smart recruitment in markets where the players we pick up, they might not be known to even us. They might not be known to other fans of football here in England, but they're beloved in the countries where they play, the countries where they come from. Obviously, Turkey is not Cameroon, but Ferdi Kadioglu, who we signed 2 seasons ago, he the beginning of last season, he opened his Instagram comments after any post, and it's just all Fenerbahce fans wishing him well and hoping he comes back one day. As I said, believe is a talisman for his country. That goes for Matoma, obviously. That goes for so many of the players that we pick up these days. That they might be new names to us, but they're huge where they come from, and so that's really helped expand the fan base. And you can see it on match days. You can see the international fans, in great numbers at the Amex. Online, I don't think the issue is so much people who have never stepped foot in the Amex or being the Brighton. I think the downside to so many people tuning in and starting to follow the club at this high point in its trajectory is there is a lot of entitlement, and the expectations that some fans have are a bit distorted. I think we have fans that will be disappointed if we're not finishing in the Champions League places at the end of every game week, and it's I don't find anything crazy about Tony's model or the idea that your season plays out in fits and starts, and we're quite streaky. We might go a few games without winning. We might go 10 games without losing. That's just how it is. And, the hope is that you win enough games that you finish in the European places. But right now it does kind of feel like, because the floor we have is a mid-table finish, there are just a lot of fans who are itching for constant success, and I think that's kind of the issue that you really encounter. Not so much people who are terminally online and never at games and have no real finger on the pulse of the club,
which we are riddled with.
The price of success.
Yeah, well, I wish it was the price of success, but I suppose we still get more success than most, and a lot of United fans would do well to remember that. Thank you, Lincoln. Thank you, Murph. Thank you, Roy. Looking forward to hopefully a good game tomorrow, and for 3/4 of us, a United win. On your part, Lincoln, let's hope Belieber plays well, and let's just hope good 90 minutes, and well, for Ruben Amorim, a 3rd victory in a row, hopefully. But we will see. Keep your eye on the socials. Obviously, Cream of Manchester, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, etc. Instagram, Twitter. We're all over everything. Get in touch with us and we will respond. And enjoy the match and enjoy your week. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Cheers up.